No kidding. Huh, that's really interesting. Oh, hello everyone. I was just hanging out with Copperhead here, and we were chatting about the Warhawk fight. So in this video, what I'd like to do is just kind of give you some of the background details to the fight from Copperhead versus Warhawk. Yeah, I'll tell him. Don't worry about it. As with any of these fight recaps I'm doing, it is best if you go ahead and watch the episode first, because this is going to completely spoil and ruin the episode for you. The episode in question is Season 4, Episode 13, so I'll wait for you and let you watch that episode, and then you can come back and we'll talk about the Warhawk fight. Okay, so let's talk about the Warhawk fight. At this point in the competition, we were kind of not really feeling it. We just came off the loss against Kronos. And it was, it was an interesting loss. That's what's kind of weird about combat robots sometimes, is we really screwed them up. I mean, we cracked their shell or cracked their ring, and for us it was relatively easy. We just replaced one of the side rails. We had a backup, we kind of swapped that in, and luckily we actually had one backup of a side rail, and it happened to be just the left side, so that was perfect. We swapped that back in, everything else was fine, no real damage other than that whole rail. So for us, it really wasn't that big of a deal. We were back in it. We had two full, perfect working robots. Kronos was effectively out after that because they couldn't really do anything with the ring. So even though we kind of knocked them out of the competition, they actually got the win, and we continued. So it's kind of one of those weird things. So we just, weren't too thrilled about that. Our record wasn't great at this point. And, Warhawk wasn't doing great either up until now. They had some previous fights. I don't remember all of their fights, but, they got split into 3 by Bronco, and they had a couple of radio issues here and there. So both of us as teams, we kind of went up to each other and it's like, we'll see how it goes. Because, we were having some demons, they were having some demons. So both of us were just kind of, ready to see what happened. The good news about this fight, though, is going into it, we're both vertical spinners, and we were a little bit leery after Kronos of any horizontal spinners because we weren't sure how, these forks would fare after that hit with Kronos. So we were happier with the idea of a vertical spinner, so we had at least that going for us. There's really not a ton to talk about with the actual fight, other than they cut out all of our good stuff. We had a lot of really good footage, I think, before and after the fights, with interviews and some pit stuff. And also, I can't remember if this was the fight where I actually pressed the button, but that definitely got cut out, so bummer to that. But, it's always edited for TV, and you got to remember that TV show first. But other than that, the fight was really short. Copperhead actually worked the way it was supposed to. We got the drum spinning on the first go. We didn't have any cogging issues with the drum. It got up to speed. The drive was working. So at this point in the competition, everything was doing what it was supposed to do. We got all the demons with the drive figured out. We got all the demons with the weapon figured out. And now it was doing what it was supposed to do. And we just got a couple really decent hits on Warhawk. And I'll probably sprinkle some images through here. The little wedgelets that they have up front are relatively lightweight, and I'm not really sure if it's a weight issue with them or something like that, but they're a little bit lighter weight than I would have probably put on that bot, especially with, something like this. As soon as we made contact with one of those wedgelets, it just chewed it up, and they just got absolutely mangled. I don't know if that would have been my choice, and of course I'm just armchair engineering, so if anyone from Warhawk is watching this, I'm not making suggestions for you guys. I'm just kind of, theorizing through the fight. But that front wedge that they have that's kind of pretty flat, maybe that would have been a better option because we would have just kind of been hitting flat against that. But I feel like the wedgelets, I don't think they really grabbed all that much. They just kind of almost disintegrated. We took off a couple pieces of the HDPE or UHMW, the black pieces on the side, so that didn't do a ton of damage. It just kind of, flipped those off. But that last final hit where we just really grabbed them in the front and threw them up against the wall, that definitely knocked them out. And I'm not really 100% sure what happened, if it was a radio issue or if it was just the bot was done. That was a pretty good hit, and we were happy with that, and we could have gone over to them and hit them again, but at this point we really wanted to take the win. That was a good solid hit. I think anyone's going to be okay having a knockout like that. regarding that last and final hit. That final hit did not come without any consequence. There was actually a pretty severe consequence to that. The drum was still spinning, everything was still fine. We got back to the pits, we kind of tore things down, recharged the batteries. You know, we had 2 bots, we were feeling a little bit better about how things went. But we noticed that when we were taking off the drum and reassembling some things, that the drum was binding up a little bit. So this was that first moment where we're like, uh-oh. We found out that the weapon shaft that runs this whole length of the piece, when we put it in one way, it was fine, but then if we put it in reverse, it wasn't fine. So it turns out when we hit Warhawk at the very end, if you watch the video again, it's actually a weapon-to-weapon hit. That hit was enough to actually bend the end of the weapon shaft. And I've shown this in previous videos. This thing is pretty darn big, and it was just enough that right here where the pulley is, it just kind of tweaked it a little bit. So exaggerated, the weapon shaft kind of comes like this and down. So it just bent it right here. And we theorized the reason is we've got cups here and here. They're welded into the side frame. So it's pretty well supported there. And the screws come into, let's say, about there. Then from here on, it's all spherical bearings here. It's unsupported here, spherical bearings once again. And then in this little space right here, which is the pulley area, there's a little spacer inside there that just kind of spaces it from the shaft to the pulley, and then it's supported right here. So in this very small area, there's a little bit of a gap, and that was enough to when we hit weapon to weapon, it just forced the drum in and just shifted that shaft just a little bit, enough that, you know, it was kind of out of balance. So that was an interesting hit, is that even though we got a good punt up against the wall, we still got a little bit of damage out of that. So we ended up swapping out that shaft, going to a different shaft, and then we were all good after that. But that actually concerned us a little bit because that wasn't the biggest hit in the world, and knowing that we could end up bending that shaft was not something good that we wanted to find out. At this point, Copperhead was 2-2. Not great, but also not terrible. There was a lot of bots at 2-2 at this point in the season, so it's just in the hands of the selection committee and how they want to do this, but it's always nice that your last fight was a really good, decisive win, and it showed that we could do some damage. And they actually did their homework. I mean, they were coming through the pits. They were definitely checking, you know, who had working bots, who had functional bots, who had a backup. And it was really good that we had 2 fully functional bots at this point. So that always helps with the selection committee. So the only way that you're going to figure this out is to tune in next week and see what happens and see how all this shakes out. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time.